The DHS secretary who has been playing dress up, she went down to El Salvador to this prison and played dress up and filmed the video.
With her $50,000 Rolex
yes,
watch?
I saw the watch,
right.
honey.
Yeah.
I saw the watch.
Okay.
They put her in the prison and got her out.
Yeah.
Why? The United States government is paying for the men that have been sent to this facility. They literally gave millions and millions of dollars to El Salvador for payment for the men that are there. Why can't they just get him out? Why are they saying they don't know where he is?
You know, that's exactly, that's a very good question. I mean, I looked up an article today that was from February 4, the Associated Press, when Rubio said, oh my gosh, the president of El Salvador has made this wonderful offer to us. And he basically said, not only is he offering to hold migrants, he's offering to hold American citizens. He's offered to do the same for dangerous criminals currently in custody and serving their sentence in the United States, even though they're U.S. citizens or legal residents. If you're doing that, you can get them back. You can't send, if somebody's serving a sentence of X years, yeah, by right, you have to get them, be able to send them back. Okay, this is bull. Okay, and they're playing games with this federal judge, just like that lawyer said. Oh, they're sending somebody to court who probably doesn't know the answer. Like, all you say, you want to send you to court, but I'm going to tell you anything you can say. So then the lawyer just goes, I'm sorry, Judge, I don't have an answer to your questions, even though these are basic questions.
And they're effectively disappearing people. They're building a framework by which, and that is where I think all of these cases begin to come together, whether you're talking about Mahmoud Khalil, whether you were talking about Abrego Garcia. And there was a great piece in Slate by our friend Joseph. Thank you. He has three names and never remember which order they're in. And he writes, Trump's newly confirmed Solicitor General, John Sauer, is openly asking the justices, the Supreme Court justices, to affirm the government's right to establish a black site in El Salvador, to which any individual may be renditioned without legal recourse. Once there, they are subject to indefinite detention, hard labor, torture, and death. According to Sauer, however, American courts are powerless to order their return, even when the government admits to removing them by mistake.
Yeah.
How convenient.
As a conservative federal judge essentially said, I may not have the quote right, but they're, in the Fourth Circuit, a very famous judge, Judge Wilkins, has said in handling one of these cases, said they're creating a regime of perfect lawlessness. Okay? They are basically creating a black hole for due process. And what they are doing is basically they're saying, okay, we're going to send them somewhere. We're going to pay these people to hold them, but then we're not responsible for them. We're not responsible if we make a mistake. We're not responsible if we do it for the wrong reason. We're not responsible, and we can't get them back. Sorry.
Right.
Okay? And not only that, this CCOT, or whatever you call this prison that they have here that's in El Salvador, it's run by gangs, essentially. And it's and people, I'm not sure people actually come out of there. I mean, we're talking, this is the road to, I mean, this is what they started doing in Germany in the 30s. And we're on the road here to something, I mean, if we're not already there, something really,
well, they're creating the black hole using the law to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that for me is
But they're not using the law.
Well, no, let me get to well, they are because Marco Rubio is relying on powers that are stated in law, according to him, that they can take someone like Khalil, right, and remove him, put him somewhere else, because of his potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences that he posed. That's the law. Well, and that gives him the power. So my point is, I want to know, what has this Columbia student done, right, that is such a serious adverse policy, has such a serious adverse policy, foreign policy consequence to the United States? Exactly what did he write? What did he say? That would justify the Secretary of State holding up this provision of regulation / law, right, to justify taking someone out of their home, off the streets, or off a campus.
But it's not law. It's not law. It's the veneer of law.
So what is
he wrote, I think
Secretary of State Marco Rubio cited a rarely used statute
I understand,
to justify.
the statute, right.
So that's my point, George. I don't look. I'm not going to play the semantics game. The reality of it is he's relying on authority, broadly speaking, either written as a regulation or written as a statute.
It's a veneer.
And that's
fake.
That's not a real statute.
No, but their use of the statute is fake because the predicate for the use of the statute doesn't exist. It's like the Alien Enemies Act. They're saying,
but that's my point. They're using what is written on paper. I get what you're saying, but I just want to break it down for folks. I'm not going to play the legal game here. What they're doing,
they're playing the legal game,
right? You're taking something from the 1700s. You're taking something that was written in the 1950s in statute because of the circumstances at the time, right? And they're applying it to the individual cases that we see. I'm actually helping your point of creating the black hole.
Right, they're creating the black hole by lying about what the law says.
Right, that's
okay,
all. That's all
right. They're misapplying the law. They're saying, "Oh, this is an invasion." Where's the invasion? What is an invasion? Invasion is when a bunch of people come together en masse
but
with
the
arms.
Courts are buying.
No, they're not.
They're not.
Tell us about this immigration judge.
Tell me what you think the Supreme Court is doing.
Well, the Supreme Court and this immigration judge.
The Supreme Court. We have to. I mean, there's so many different cases. Okay, so we have to untangle all of them. But are we going to the break or no?
No.
Oh, okay.
Right. We discussed this in the break.
We discussed this in the break. Okay. So, all right. So in the case of the habeas case, right? The case where they said that. You had to bring the challenges against the deportations, the mass deportations or the mass renditions of the Venezuelans to El Salvador. They just said you had to do it in a different procedural fashion. But what they also said was these people get due process. And they get due process, first of all, they have to get notice before they're taken off the streets or before they're sent abroad. They get notice, and then they can bring a habeas petition. Now, it's a slightly different procedure, but they get to challenge the terms of their detention. And already, judges in New York and judges in Texas have basically said stop. And that's how the issue of whether or not they're full of BS when they're saying that this is an invasion under the Alien Enemies Act or a war, or these people are alien enemies. That's how that's going to get litigated, and it will get litigated. Okay. Now, I mean, you can debate whether the Supreme Court was right on whether or not the proper procedure is habeas. I think they were probably wrong, but they are saying 9-0. They did say, and this is a huge loss to the administration, they said 9-0, these people get due process. And Stephen Miller at the White House said these people don't get due process at all. Okay? The government actually ended up conceding the point in the Supreme Court. And that's what I mean. They lie. They say they make up one rationale, then they realize we have to come up with another one, and then they send people to court in that other case where they don't tell the lawyer the information that the judge needs to be able to enforce her order, and that's their way of trying to avoid it. They're playing games. They make stuff up as they go along.
Why won't the judges stop them?
The judges are working on it. They have to, but the judges can't say. Judges can say, produce this guy, bring him back, facilitate his return. Okay, and they're going to say, sorry, we can't do that. Well, what's the judge going to do? The judge gets to, and the Supreme Court made clear that the judge gets to do this, gets to find out, well, why is it? You know, tell us more. Bring somebody to court to testify, and this will happen. Bring somebody to court to testify to tell us exactly why you can't ask the man who's coming to Washington on Monday, the president of El Salvador, why you can't even ask him to bring somebody back that you concede was taken out of the country illegally.
This is a very good point. The president of El Salvador will literally be down the street. We're literally at the Capitol, down the street from the Capitol. Be down the street at the White House on Monday.
He's a thug.
Folks should be asking questions. Yeah, he shouldn't even be at the White House, but that's a whole other story about how we just throwing the papers up in the foreign policy.
Right. Thug life.
George, Tupac don't got nothing to do with this, but can you please stay? Because we also want to discuss what's happening with the law firms.
I never want to leave. I love it here.
You are with us.
All right.
There are these law firms that are caving to Donald Trump. We want to get into that.
Don't get me started on that. No, you can't do that on television.
You're watching The Weekend, folks.
I can't say that on TV.